The vanilla frosting formed perfect peaks on my birthday cake. 18 candles waiting to be lit. Mom had outdone herself this year, carefully piping blue roses around the edges. My favorite color. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching her hands tremble slightly as she placed the final decorations. "It looks beautiful, Mom," I said, my voice soft in the morning quiet of our suburban Ohio home. Karen Brooks, now Karen Hale for the past 12 years, looked up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. 18 candles for 18 years. My baby girl's all grown up. I moved to hug her, breathing in her familiar scent of vanilla and that department store perfume she always wore. For just a moment, I felt like a little girl again, before Stephen came into our lives, before the walking on eggshells began. "He's in a good mood today," she whispered against my hair. "Let's keep it that way, okay?" I nodded, the familiar weight settling on my shoulders. Stephen's good moods were as unpredictable as Ohio weather. Sunny one minute, storming the next. But today was different. Today, I turned 18, legally an adult. Maybe that would finally earn me a shred of his respect. The kitchen door swung open, and Stephen's broad frame filled the doorway. 6'2" of corporate success in a crisp button-down, even on a Saturday. His eyes, cold blue, nothing like my hazel ones, scanned me from head to toe. "Birthday girl's finally up," he said, his voice carrying that edge it always had when he addressed me. Not quite mocking, not quite neutral. "Big plans today?" "Just the small party tonight," I replied, keeping my voice steady, pleasant. "A few friends coming over." He nodded, his attention already drifting to my mother. "Karen, did you call the landscapers? The neighbor's lawn looks better than ours." And just like that, I became invisible again. I slipped out of the kitchen, relief washing over me as I headed upstairs to my room. My sanctuary, for now. My phone buzzed with birthday messages from friends. Jess, my best friend since 3rd grade. "Happy 18th Liv, Freedom Day." If only she knew how much I'd been counting down to this day. Not just for the milestone, but for what it represented. Options. I'd already been accepted to 3 colleges, all with partial scholarships. My perfect GPA and extracurriculars had paid off. Stephen had made it clear over the years, through pointed comments during dinner, through comparing me to his real children, my half-siblings Ethan and Madison, both under 10, that he was counting down too, counting down to when I'd no longer be his financial responsibility. "You're not even mine," he'd mutter sometimes when Mom wasn't in the room. "You're just excess baggage from Karen's mistakes." I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My dark, wavy hair and olive skin so different from my mother's fairness, so different from Stephen's Nordic features. I'd spent years studying my own face, searching for traces of the man whose name was never spoken in our house. Karen Brooks. I'd found an old photo once, hidden in Mom's jewelry box. Just a glimpse of a smiling man with my same dark hair before she snatched it away. Panic in her eyes. "He left us, Olivia," she'd said. "He doesn't matter anymore." But he did matter. The ghost of him shaped the hollow spaces in my life, the silences at dinner tables, the way Stephen looked at me like I was a reminder of something he wanted to erase. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparations. I helped Mom set up the living room while Stephen took Ethan and Madison to their swimming lessons. By 6 o'clock, the house was transformed with modest decorations, and the doorbell rang with the first arrivals, Jess and a few other friends from school. "Oh my God, you're an adult now," Jess squealed, hugging me tight. "We need to celebrate properly after this. My cousin can get us into this club downtown next weekend." I laughed, pushing away the knowledge that I'd probably never get permission. "Let's get through tonight first." More friends arrived, filling our living room with chatter and laughter that felt alien in a house usually dominated by Stephen's stern silence or sharp commands. Mom fluttered around, offering snacks, taking photos, her smile more genuine now that Stephen was occupied with grilling in the backyard. When it was time for cake, everyone gathered around the dining table. The 18 candles glowed in the dimmed light, and I closed my eyes, making the same wish I'd made for years. Freedom. Just a chance to breathe, to exist without apology. "Make a wish, honey," Mom said, her camera ready. I drew a deep breath and blew, watching the tiny flames disappear into wisps of smoke. Everyone clapped, and for one perfect moment I felt normal, loved, celebrated. Then I heard it. Stephen's voice, low but caring from the kitchen doorway. "Karen, we need to talk. Now." The tone sent ice through my veins. I'd heard it before. whenever he'd decided something about my life without consulting me. My friends continued chatting, oblivious to the storm gathering, but I watched Mom follow Stephen into the kitchen, her shoulders already hunching in that familiar way. I cut the cake mechanically, passing slices to my friends, trying to keep my smile in place while straining to hear the hushed conversation from the kitchen. Fragments drifted out. 18 now, Karen. Promised we'd wait. My house, my rules. Please, Stephen, not tonight. My hands trembled as I served the last slice. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The kitchen door swung open and Stephen emerged, his face set in that mask of righteous determination I'd grown to fear. Behind him, Mom's face was ashen, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Everyone, Stephen announced, his corporate voice cutting through the party chatter. Thank you for coming, but we have a family situation to address. The party's over. My friends froze, forks halfway to mouths, eyes darting between Stephen's stern face and my mother's tears. What's going on? I asked, my voice sounding small even to my own ears. Stephen turned to me, and in his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not just the usual coldness, but something like triumph. Olivia, he said, my name sounding wrong on his lips. You're 18 now, an adult, as you are. Keep reminding us. I stood frozen as he disappeared into the hallway closet, returning with something that made my blood run cold. A black trash bag. With deliberate slowness, he placed it on the floor between us. You're not my blood, he said, each word a knife. And this is not your home. Not anymore. The bag hit the floor with a wet thud, the sound echoing like a gunshot inside my chest. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I stood trembling in front of my birthday cake, its candles still smoking faintly. My friends stared, their whispers filling the room like knives against my skin. When I looked at Mom, her lips quivered, but she said nothing. That silence hurt worse than Stephen's words. The trash bag, my whole life crammed into wrinkled plastic, felt impossibly heavy in my hands. I stood on Stephen's front porch, the door firmly shut behind me. Through the frosted glass, I could see the blurred outline of my mother, her hand raised as if reaching toward me, before Stephen's larger shadow pulled her away. Rain pattered against the porch roof, a steady drumbeat marking my new reality. My phone buzzed in my pocket, texts from Jess and others who had been hurriedly ushered out the back door while Stephen delivered his verdict. I couldn't bring myself to read them. What would I say? Got kicked out at my birthday party. NBD, just homeless now. The absurdity of it made a hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat. 18 years old, honor roll student, already accepted to college, and everything I owned was in a garbage bag. I stepped off the porch into the rain. May in Ohio was unpredictable. Warm sunshine one moment, chilling rain the next. The water soaked through my t-shirt within seconds, plastering my hair to my face. Each step down the quiet suburban street felt heavier than the last, as if the sky itself wanted to crush me. Where would I go? Jess's parents might take me in, but for how long? I had some savings from my part-time job at the bookstore, but nowhere near enough for an apartment. My mind raced through possibilities, each one more depressing than the last. I passed manicured lawns and glowing windows, glimpses of normal families inside, parents helping with homework, siblings arguing over TV shows, all the ordinary moments I'd watched from the outside even while living under Stephen's roof. The rain intensified, and I ducked under a massive oak tree, trying to catch my breath and think clearly. That's when I heard it. The low purr of an engine, tires slowly crunching on wet pavement. Headlights cut across the darkness, illuminating the curtain of rain. A sleek black car slowed to a stop beside me. Every warning about strangers flooded my mind. I backed against the tree trunk, clutching my trash bag like a shield. The tinted passenger window lowered with an electric hum, revealing a man's face. Mid-30s perhaps, with sharp features softened by kind eyes. Olivia Brooks? His voice was calm, steady, cutting through the drum of rain. My heart hammered against my ribs. Who's asking? Adrian Stone, he replied, offering nothing more, as if the name should mean something to me. Your father sent me. My father? I repeated, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. Stephen Hale is not my father. He made that abundantly clear about 20 minutes ago. A small smile touched Adrian's lips. Not Stephen. Your real father. Kieran Brooks. The name hit me like a physical force. Kieran Brooks. The forbidden name. The ghost in our house. The man whose blood ran in my veins but whose face I barely remembered. That's impossible, I whispered. He left. He abandoned us. Adrian's expression softened. Is that what they told you? Kieran never abandoned you, Olivia. He was pushed out, kept away. He's been waiting for this day, your 18th birthday, for years. How do you know it's my birthday? My voice cracked. Because he knows everything. He's been watching from a distance, fighting to reach you. Fighting Stephen's restraining orders and legal maneuvers. Adrian paused, letting his words sink in. Kieran knows about the Honor Society, the poetry award you won last year, the acceptance letter from NYU. My legs nearly gave out. No one knew about NYU except Jess. I hadn't even told Mom yet, knowing Stephen would find a way to crush that dream too. Why now? I managed to ask. Why not years ago? Legal restrictions. Stephen Hale is a powerful man with expensive lawyers. The restraining order was airtight until you turned 18. Adrian glanced at my soaked clothes and the pathetic trash bag, though it seems Kieran's timing was better than he knew. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the rain came down harder. Adrian reached over and opened the passenger door. You don't have to decide anything permanent right now, but you're soaked. It's pouring, and you need somewhere dry to think. He held out a business card. Here's my ID. I'm Kieran's lawyer and friend. You can verify me online, call the police, whatever makes you feel safe. But right now, Kieran is waiting to see his daughter for the first time in 12 years. I stared at the card, water dripping from my fingertips onto the embossed lettering. Adrian Stone, attorney at law. A downtown Columbus address, a phone number. How do I know this isn't some elaborate trick? My teeth chattered from cold and fear. Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, slightly yellowed with age. He asked me to give you this, if you needed convincing. The envelope bore my name in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a photograph and a letter. The photo showed a much younger me, maybe 5 or 6, on a man's shoulders at what looked like a county fair. I was laughing, cotton candy in one hand, the other tangled in the dark hair of the man beneath me. The same dark hair I saw in my mirror every day. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, it means you're finally 18 and Stone has found you. There's so much I need to tell you, so many years to explain. But first, you should know this. I never left you willingly. Not for one day, not for 1 minute. Your mother made a choice when you were 6. She chose security with Stephen over uncertainty with me. I fought it as long as I could, but Stephen's money bought judges, bought silence, bought the story. They fed you about me abandoning you. I've been watching from a distance, keeping track of your life through school records, social media, anywhere I could glimpse my little girl growing up. Every restraining order, every legal threat, they kept me from your door, but never from loving you. You have my eyes, my love for books, and if your poetry award is any indication, maybe my way with words too. I've kept every article that mentioned your name, every school newsletter, created a life of you in my mind to fill the aching space where you should have been. If you choose to come with Stone, I'll be waiting. If you need more time, I understand. But know this, you have always been loved, always been wanted, always been the best of me living in the world. All my love, Dad, Kieran. The paper grew, spotted with water, rain or tears, I couldn't tell anymore. I looked up at Adrian, who waited patiently, making no move to rush my decision. He lives in Columbus? My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Adrian nodded. About 30 minutes from here. Nice house, quiet neighborhood. He's a professor at Ohio State, English literature. That detail, so specific, so ordinary, somehow made everything else real. My father wasn't some mythical figure who'd abandoned us. He was a professor who lived half an hour away, who'd been watching over me from a distance, collecting scraps of my life like precious artifacts. Does he know what happened tonight? I asked, glancing back toward the house where I'd lived for 12 years, never truly belonging. Not the details, Adrian said, but he knew. Stephen well enough to prepare for the worst when you turned 18? Kieran's been ready for this day for years. I looked down at my trash bag, at my soaked clothes, at the photo of a laughing child who didn't yet know her world was about to shatter. Then I looked at Adrian's outstretched hand. An offer, a choice, a door opening when another had just slammed shut. The rain continued to fall, washing away the tears on my face, washing away 18 years of wondering why I wasn't enough, why I didn't belong. I took a deep breath and stepped toward the car. Take me to my father. The car's interior was warm and smelled of leather and subtle cologne. Adrian drove smoothly through the rain-slicked streets, the wipers creating a hypnotic rhythm against the windshield. My soaked clothes clung uncomfortably to my skin, but I barely noticed. My mind was too full, racing with questions, doubts, and a dangerous flicker of hope. "He's nervous," Adrian said after we'd been driving in silence for several minutes. He's been rehearsing what to say to you for years, and now he's probably forgotten all of it." I clutched the letter in my hands, its edges soft from my tight grip. "What's he like?" The question seemed impossibly small for all I wanted to know. Adrian smiled, eyes still on the road. "Brilliant, stubborn, loves poetry and bad science fiction movies, makes terrible dad jokes that he thinks are hilarious." He glanced at me. "You have his expressions. The way you furrow your brow when you're thinking hard. That's all, Kieran." I touched my forehead, self-consciously, realizing I was indeed furrowing my brow. Mom never talked about him. Whenever I asked, she'd just say he wasn't ready to be a father and left. I swallowed hard. Was that a lie? "It's complicated," Adrian replied carefully. "When your mother met Stephen, he offered her security that Kieran couldn't match. Kieran was just starting his career, struggling to make tenure. Stephen saw your mother at a faculty event. She was working catering and pursued her aggressively. So she chose money over love?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "She chose stability for her child," Adrian corrected gently. "At least that's how it started. But Stephen had conditions. He wanted Karen to himself, wanted to create his own family without reminders of her past. The restraining order came after Kieran refused to stop trying to see you. We turned onto the highway, the car picking up speed. Columbus glowed in the distance, its lights blurred by rain and distance like a watercolor painting. "A restraining order? On what grounds?" Adrian's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Stephen claimed Kieran was unstable, a threat. He had witnesses. Paid, of course, testifying that Kieran had made threats against him. Your father fought it, but Stephen had connections in the local courts. And my mom went along with this?" My voice cracked. By then, she was under Stephen's influence, isolated from friends, dependent on him financially. Adrian's voice remained neutral, but I caught the undercurrent of judgment. Kieran tried to appeal, tried to at least get visitation rights, but each attempt was blocked. Eventually, the court ordered him to stay 500 feet from both you and your mother. I stared out the window, watching raindrops race down the glass, merging and separating like the threads of my own fractured history. He could have reached out when I got older, explained things. He wrote you letters, dozens of them. Birthday. Cards, Christmas cards, notes about your accomplishments. Adrian changed lanes smoothly. "Did you ever receive any?" The question hung between us, its answer already clear. I shook my head, a fresh wave of anger washing over me. How many moments had been stolen? How many connections severed? After a while, he realized Stephen was intercepting everything. That's when Kieran decided to wait until, you were legally an adult, beyond Stephen's control. Adrian's voice softened. "He never stopped trying, Olivia. Never stopped watching over you from a distance." We exited the highway, entering a residential area of Columbus I didn't recognize. Large oak trees lined the streets, their branches creating a canopy overhead. The homes were older, dignified, with character that spoke of history and permanence. "We're almost there," Adrian said, slowing the car. "Are you ready for this?" Was I? The events of the night swirled in my mind. The birthday cake, Stephen's cruel dismissal, my mother's silence, and now this journey to meet a stranger who was nevertheless my blood. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing I had to jump but unable to see what waited below. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me is furious. At him, at Mom, at everyone who let this happen. Another part is just tired. Tired of feeling like I don't belong anywhere." Adrian nodded. "That's fair. Just remember, Kieran isn't expecting some perfect reunion. He just wants a chance to know you, on whatever terms you're comfortable with." We turned onto a quiet street lined with modest but well-maintained homes. Adrian pulled up in front of a 2-story brick house with a small front porch. Warm light glowed from the windows, and despite the rain, I could make out flower beds bordering the walkway. It looked like the kind of home that welcomed people, that held stories and laughter within its walls. "This is it," Adrian said quietly. "Kieran's home, your father's home." I stared at the house, my heart hammering so hard I was sure Adrian could hear it. 18 years of wondering, of filling in blanks with my imagination, and now the answer sat just yards away. What if he's disappointed? The fear escaped before I could stop it. What if I'm not what he expected? Adrian turned to face me fully for the first time. Olivia, listen to me. That man in there has a room filled with everything. He could gather about you. Newspaper clippings when your debate team won regionals, a framed copy of your poem that was published in the school literary magazine, photos taken from a distance at your piano recitals. He has loved you from afar with a fierceness that's frankly humbling to witness. There is no version of you that could disappoint him. His words washed over me, a balm to years of feeling like an inconvenience, a burden, something to be tolerated rather than treasured. I looked down at my pathetic trash bag, my rain-soaked clothes, my trembling hands. I look terrible, I said with a weak laugh. You look like someone who's had one hell of a birthday, Adrian replied with a gentle smile. He won't care. I took a deep breath, gathering whatever courage remained after this day of shattering and rebuilding. Okay, I'm ready. We got out of the car, the rain having softened to a gentle mist. My legs felt unsteady as we walked up the path to the front door. Adrian stepped slightly aside, giving me space to approach on my own terms. Before we could ring the bell, the door opened. And there he was, the man from the photograph, older now, with streaks of silver threading through his dark hair. He was taller than I expected, with the same olive skin and hazel eyes I saw in my mirror every day. He wore jeans and a simple blue button-down shirt, and his hands, scholar's hands with long fingers, trembled slightly at his sides. For a moment, we simply stared at each other, a universe of lost time stretching between us. Neither of us seemed able to speak, to break the fragile magic of this moment. Then, in a voice rough with emotion, he said the only words that mattered. Olivia, you came home. The word home hung in the air between us, weighted with longing and possibility. I stood frozen on the threshold, unable to step forward or retreat. This man, my father, was both familiar and foreign, like a character from a book suddenly materialized in real life. I don't know what to call you, I said finally, my voice barely audible. A sad smile touched his lips. Kieran is fine, or whatever feels right. He stepped back, opening the door wider. Please, come in, you're soaked. I entered cautiously, Adrian following behind me. The house smelled of books and coffee, with undertones of something baking. The living room was cozy and lived in, overstuffed. Bookshelves lining the walls, a comfortable-looking sofa with mismatched pillows, a fireplace with actual logs burning. No designer perfection like Steven's sterile showcase home, but a real place where someone actually lived. I'll get you some dry clothes, Kieran said, already moving toward the stairs. Help yourself to coffee or tea in the kitchen. Adrian knows where everything is. Agia paused, looking at me with a mixture of wonder and heartbreak. I'll just be a minute. As he disappeared upstairs, I stood awkwardly clutching my trash bag, water dripping onto the hardwood floor. You can leave that here for now, Adrian said gently, gesturing to my bag. Kitchen's this way, if you want something warm to drink. I followed him, taking in details with a strange hyper-awareness. Framed photographs on the walls, many of landscapes, none of people. Books stacked on every surface, a collection of mismatched coffee mugs on open shelving. The kitchen was modest but warm, with worn countertops and a round oak table by a window overlooking a backyard garden. Tea? Adrian offered, already filling an electric kettle. I nodded, sinking into a kitchen chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the evening was fading, leaving me hollow and drained. Adrian moved around the kitchen with the familiarity of someone who'd been there many times before. Kieran's been my friend since law school, he explained, answering my unasked question. I was there when he got the final restraining order. I've never seen a man so broken. Then, why didn't he fight harder? The question burst out of me, sharp with the pain of 18 years of absence. Adrian placed a steaming mug in front of me. He did. For years. Every legal avenue, every possible approach. He tried to reach out through mutual friends, through the school, even hired a private investigator to make sure you were okay. But Stephen was always one step ahead, always ready, with another legal threat, another boundary. And my mother? Was she forced to go along with this? Adrian's expression grew cautious. That's something you should discuss with Kieran, and perhaps someday with your mother. There are complexities there that aren't my story to tell. Footsteps on the stairs interrupted us. Kieran returned carrying a small stack of clothes, sweatpants, a t-shirt, and a zip-up hoodie. These might be big, but they're warm and dry, he said, placing them on the table. There's a bathroom down the hall if you want to change. I took the clothes and found the bathroom, a simple space with vintage tile and a clawfoot tub. The mirror reflected a stranger, pale face streaked with mascara, hair plastered to my head, eyes wide with shock and exhaustion. I looked like a survivor of some disaster, which, in a way, I was. The clothes were indeed too large, but soft with age and washing. The NYU logo on the hoodie caught my attention. My dream school, the acceptance letter still hidden in my desk drawer at what used to be my home. When I returned to the kitchen, Kieran was sitting at the table, hands wrapped around a mug, tension radiating from his shoulders. He looked up when I entered, his expression softening. "Better?" he asked. I nodded, taking the seat across from him. Adrian discreetly excused himself, mumbling something about making calls in the other room. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the only sounds the gentle ticking of a wall clock and the occasional pop from the fireplace in the living room. "I don't know where to start," Kieran said. "Finally. I've imagined this conversation for so many years, and now I can't find the right words." "Why don't you start with the truth?" I suggested, my hands tight around the warm mug. "The whole truth." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "I met your mother when we were both 22. I was a graduate student in English literature. She was working 3 jobs to make ends meet after dropping out of college. It was," he smiled faintly, "instant. The kind of love people write sonnets about. Within 6 months, she was pregnant with you." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "We were young, struggling financially, but so happy. We lived in a tiny apartment near campus, planning our future together. Then when you were about 3, things got harder. I was working on my dissertation, teaching classes, and your mom was feeling the strain of being home alone with a toddler while I worked constantly. I listened intently, trying to imagine these younger versions of my parents, struggling but together. That's when she met Stephen at a faculty reception she was catering. He was already established, successful, with the kind of stability I couldn't offer then. He pursued her. Aggressively. Kieran's voice tightened. I didn't realize how serious it was until she told me she was leaving, taking you with her to move into his house in the suburbs. "Did you try to stop her?" I asked. "Of course. I begged, argued, promised things would get better. But Stephen had painted a very attractive picture of the life he could provide." Kieran ran a hand through his hair. A gesture, so familiar it made my heart ache. "I did the same thing when stressed. For the first couple of years, I still saw you regularly. Weekend visits, phone calls. I'd pick you up from preschool sometimes, take you for ice cream." "I don't remember that," I said quietly. Pain flashed across his face. "You were so young. But then, when you were about 6, Stephen adopted the role of your father more forcefully. He began restricting my visits, always finding reasons to cancel. When I objected, things escalated. He claimed I was disruptive, unstable, a bad influence." Kieran's voice hardened. Then came the restraining order based on fabricated threats. He had witnesses, people I'd never met, claiming I'd threatened him, that I was obsessive and dangerous. "And Mom? What did she do?" Kieran hesitated, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. "Your mother was caught between impossible choices. By then, she'd become dependent on Stephen financially, emotionally. She had your half-siblings on the way. She chose the path she thought would provide stability. She chose him over you, over us. It's not that simple, Olivia." His voice was gentle but firm. "I don't want you to hate your mother. She made choices under pressure I can't fully understand. What matters is that you know I never abandoned you, never stopped trying to reach you, never stopped loving you." I looked around this warm kitchen, at this man who was my father, and felt the weight of all the lost years between us. Birthdays, school events, ordinary Tuesday dinners, all the moments that make up a relationship, gone forever. "When did you decide to wait until I was 18? I asked. "After the 5th appeal was denied. Adrian helped me realize I was fighting a losing battle against Stephen's money and influence." Kieran leaned forward, his eyes intense. "But I never gave up watching over you from a distance. I have a whole room upstairs. Newspaper clippings of your debate team victories, programs from your piano recitals I attended in the back row, your published poems. I've followed every success, grieved every hardship I couldn't help you through." The realization that he'd been there, Witnessing my life without being able to participate in it broke something open inside me. Tears spilled down my cheeks, tears I'd been holding back since that trash bag hit the floor hours ago. "Why tonight?" I managed to ask. "How did you know?" "Adrian has been monitoring the situation. We knew your birthday might be difficult. Stephen had made comments over the years about his plans once you turned 18. We've been prepared to intervene for months." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine, giving me the space to decide. I never imagined he'd be so cruel, so public about it. I looked at his outstretched hand, older than in the photographs, with writer's calluses and a small ink stain on one finger. Slowly, I placed my hand in his. The connection was electric, strange, and somehow perfectly right. "I have so many questions," I whispered. "And I have a lifetime to answer them," he replied, his voice breaking slightly. "If you'll let me." Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, momentarily disorienting me as I blinked awake. The guest bedroom in Kieran's, my father's house, was simply furnished but comfortable, with bookshelves lining one wall and a desk beneath a window overlooking the backyard. For a few seconds, I lay still, the events of the previous night washing over me in waves. My birthday, Stephen's cruelty, the rain-soaked walk, Adrian's appearance, and finally, meeting the father I'd thought had abandoned me. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Olivia? Are you awake?" Kieran's voice, still new to me, carried through the door. "Yes," I called back, sitting up and running a hand through my tangled hair. "Come in." He opened the door cautiously, as if afraid of intruding. He carried a tray with a mug of coffee, a glass of orange juice, and a plate of toast. "I wasn't sure what you like for breakfast," he said, placing the tray on the desk. "I can make eggs or something more substantial if you're hungry." The gesture, so simple yet so filled with consideration, made my throat tighten. How many mornings had I made my own breakfast in Stephen's house, careful to be quiet, to stay out of the way? "This is perfect," I said. "Thank you." Kieran hovered awkwardly for a moment, clearly wanting to say more but unsure how to proceed. "I thought maybe after breakfast, if you feel up to it, I could show you some things. Help fill in some of the blanks." I nodded, taking a sip of the coffee, prepared exactly as I liked it, with just a splash of milk. "How did you know?" I asked, gesturing to the mug. A small, sad smile touched his lips. "Adrian's been keeping tabs. Part of our preparation for when you turned 18 involved learning your routines, your preferences. Is that creepy?" "It probably sounds creepy." I surprised myself with a laugh. "A little, but also, I don't know. Nice, I guess, that someone was paying attention. I've always been paying attention, Olivia. From a distance, but still." He moved toward the door. "Take your time. I'll be downstairs when you're ready." After he left, I sat cross-legged on the bed, eating toast and trying to process the surreal turn my life had taken. My phone had died overnight, and I realized I'd left my charger back at... I couldn't even think of it as home anymore. I'd have to face that reality soon. Contact my friends, figure out what to do about the remaining weeks of school, deal with my mother. My mother. The thought of her froze me mid-bite. Had she tried to call? Was she worried? Or had she simply accepted Stephen's decision, as she'd accepted so much over the years? I finished breakfast quickly and changed back into my clothes from yesterday, now dried but wrinkled. Downstairs, I found Kieran in what appeared to be his study. A small room off the living room, with a desk facing a window and more bookshelves crammed with volumes ranging from academic texts to well-worn paperbacks. "Good morning," he said, looking up from his desk where he'd been writing something by hand. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I expected," I admitted, though everything still feels like a dream, or a nightmare, depending on the moment. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I can imagine. This is a lot to process. You mentioned showing me some things?" "Yes." He stood, leading me down a short hallway to a door I hadn't noticed the night before. "This might be overwhelming, but I think you deserve to see it." He hesitated, hand on the doorknob. "I want you to understand that I never stopped being your father, even when I couldn't be with you." He opened the door to what had once been a bedroom but was now something else entirely. The walls were covered with a timeline, photographs, newspaper clippings, printouts from school websites, all connected with colored strings like something from a detective movie. A desk held stacks of legal documents, their official stamps visible even from where I stood. Shelves contained what looked like journals, dozens of them, lined up chronologically with dates on their spines. But what caught my breath was the collection of wrapped gifts in one corner. Birthday presents for every year I'd been alive, each tagged with my age. 18 years of unopened gifts, a physical manifestation of his absence and presence all at once. I know it looks obsessive, Kieran said quietly. Maybe it was, but it was the only way I could be part of your life. I moved into the room slowly, drawn to the timeline on the wall. There I was at 7, missing my 2 front teeth in a school photo. At 10, receiving an award at a science fair. At 14, performing in the school talent show. Moments I barely remembered, preserved here like precious artifacts. How did you get these? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. School websites published some. Others came from friends of friends who would send me photos discreetly. The more recent ones I took myself from a distance. Your high school graduation, the debate tournament in Cincinnati. He stood in the doorway, giving me space to absorb it all. I was always there, Olivia, just out of sight. I turned to the stack of journals. And these? Letters to you. One entry every week since I lost custody. Things I wanted to tell you, moments I wished I could share. His voice roughened. I thought someday, when you were older, you might want to know what I was thinking all those years. The weight of his devotion, this meticulous, heartbreaking archive of love at a distance, was almost too much to bear. I ran my fingers over the spines of the journals, each one a year of my father's thoughts, his connection to me maintained through sheer force of will. And the presents? I gestured to the wrapped packages. Open them if you want, or don't. They're yours either way. Kieran leaned against the doorframe. I bought a gift for every birthday, every Christmas. Sometimes I'd see something during the year that made me think of you, and I'd add it to the collection. Silly, probably. I knelt beside the gifts, touching the nearest one, wrapped in paper decorated with cartoon princesses, labeled age 7. The paper was slightly faded, the tape yellowed with time. I couldn't bring myself to open it, not yet. It felt too much like disturbing a museum exhibit, a carefully preserved history of what might have been. Instead, I moved to the legal documents, scanning the official language of restraining orders, custody battles, appeals, the cold, formal words that had kept my father from me for 12 years. You really did fight for me, I said, half to myself. Every way I could, Kieran confirmed. Until Adrian convinced me that waiting until you were 18 was the only path forward. Stephen had too much influence, too many connections, but he couldn't control you once you were an adult. I turned to face him fully. Did you know he would kick me out? Is that why you were prepared last night? Kieran's expression darkened. I suspected something like that might happen. Stephen made comments over the years to mutual acquaintances, things like counting down the days until his obligation to you ended. We had Adrian monitoring the situation, ready to intervene when you turned 18. We just didn't expect it to be quite so dramatic. The methodical cruelty of it all, Stephen's years of planning, his public humiliation of me on my birthday, made my stomach turn. But equally powerful was the revelation of my father's patient vigil, his refusal to give up even when all legal avenues were exhausted. What happens now? I asked, the question encompassing so much more than just the immediate future. Kieran stepped into the room for the first time, careful to maintain a respectful distance. That's entirely up to you, Olivia. You're 18. You can stay here as long as you want. Permanently, if that feels right. I have the space, and God knows I want nothing more than to have you here. He paused. Or I can help you set up somewhere on your own, if you prefer independence. The important thing is that you know you have options now. You have support. The word support hit me like a physical force. How long had I navigated life without that simple assurance? How many decisions had I made alone, knowing I couldn't count on the adults who were supposed to protect me? I need to finish high school, I said, thinking practically. There's only a few weeks left. Kieran nodded. We can work that out. Your school isn't far. I could drive you, or we could look into transferring if that would be easier. And college? I hesitated. I got into NYU, but the financial aid assumed Stephen's income. Kieran finished for me, understanding immediately. We'll figure that out too. I'm a professor, remember? I know how the system works. There are options. Standing in this room filled with evidence of my father's love, a love that had persisted through barriers, through years, through legal battles and heartbreak, I felt something shift inside me. Not healing, not yet. The wounds were too fresh, the betrayals too raw, but something like hope, Perhaps. A foundation on which healing might someday be built. 3 days passed in a strange limbo of adjustment and discovery. Kieran took a leave of absence from his teaching responsibilities to help me settle in. We circled each other cautiously, both eager to connect, but wary of pushing too hard, too fast. We shared meals where I learned he was a surprisingly good cook, though prone to getting distracted halfway through a recipe when a thought about his research struck him. We had long conversations about books we both loved, discovering shared tastes that couldn't be coincidence, nature or nurture. Some part of him lived in me despite our years apart. Each night, I retreated to the guest bedroom, my bedroom now, Kieran insisted, and struggled with whether to contact my mother. My phone, now charged with a cable Kieran had purchased for me, showed dozens of missed calls and texts from friends, but nothing from her. Nothing from the woman who had stood silent while Stephen threw me away like garbage. On the 4th morning, I made a decision. Kieran was in his study, grading papers despite his leave of absence. "I need to see her," I said from the doorway. He looked up, immediately understanding. "Your mother?" I nodded. "I need answers, real ones." Kieran set down his pen, giving me his full attention. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "No," I admitted, "but I need to do it anyway. Will you drive me there? I don't want to go alone, but I don't want you to come in either. This is between her and me." He nodded slowly. "Of course. Whenever you're ready." An hour later, we sat in his car across the street from the house I'd grown up in. Stephen's Mercedes was missing from the driveway. At work, presumably. My mother's small Toyota was parked in its usual spot. "I won't be long," I told Kieran, my hand on the door handle. "Take all the time you need," he replied. "I'll be right here." The walk to the front door felt surreal, like approaching a movie set of my former life. I rang the bell rather than using my key. I wasn't sure I had the right to enter unannounced anymore. The door opened almost immediately. My mother stood there, her face pale and drawn, eyes red-rimmed from crying. For a moment, we simply stared at each other. "Olivia," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Oh my God, you're okay." Before I could respond, she pulled me into a desperate hug, her body shaking with sobs. Despite everything, I found myself returning the embrace, the familiar scent of her perfume bringing a wave of complicated emotions. "Where have you been?" she asked, pulling back to study my face. "I've been so worried. I called all your friends, but no one knew anything." "Mom," I said, gently extracting myself from her grip. "Can we talk inside?" I nodded, glancing nervously at the street as if expecting Stephen to materialize. We moved to the living room, the same room where my birthday party had imploded days before. The decorations were gone, the space returned to its usual sterile perfection. "I'm staying with Dad," I said without preamble, watching her face closely. "With Kieran." The color drained from her cheeks. "Kieran? How did you—" "He found me. Or rather, his lawyer did. The night Stephen kicked me out. I kept my voice steady, determined not to break. He's been waiting for me to turn 18. Did you know that? Did you know he's been fighting for me all these years while you let Stephen treat me like something to be tolerated until he could legally throw me away?" My mother sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. "Olivia, please, it's so much more complicated than you know." "Then explain it to me," I challenged. "Make me understand how you could stand there and say nothing while your husband put my things in a trash bag and threw me out on my birthday." Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't know he was going to do that, I swear. He told me he was going to talk to you about college plans, about becoming independent. I never imagined he would be so cruel." "But you didn't stop him," I pressed. "You didn't say a word." "I couldn't," she cried, real anguish in her voice. "You don't understand what he's like when he's crossed, what he can do. I have Ethan and Madison to think about, and if I'd defied him, so you sacrificed me instead," I finished for her. The realization wasn't new, but hearing her almost admit it still cut deep. She buried her face in her hands. "I've made so many mistakes, Olivia. So many choices I can't take back." When she looked up, her eyes were pleading. "But I need you to know that I love you. I've always loved you, even when I failed to protect you." "Did you love Kieran?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me for years. Her expression softened. "Slightly. Yes, very much. He was everything once, brilliant and kind and so full of dreams. Then why did you leave him for Stephen? Why did you let Stephen push him out of our lives completely?" She was quiet for a long moment, her hands twisting in her lap. I was young and scared. A single mother working multiple jobs, barely making rent, Stephen offered security, stability. At first, I thought I could have both, Stephen's support and Kieran's presence in your life. I never intended to cut him out completely. But you did, I said flatly. Stephen's conditions became more demanding over time. He wanted us to be a family. His family. The restraining order was his idea. His manipulation. By then, I was pregnant with Ethan. Financially dependent. Her voice dropped to nearly a whisper. And afraid. Stephen has always had ways of getting what he wants. The implication hung in the air between us. I'd seen Stephen's temper over the years, the cold fury when he was defied, though he'd never been physically violent that I'd witnessed. Are you afraid of him, Mom? I asked directly. She didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Stephen controls everything. The money, the house, our social circle. If I'd gone against him that night, defended you. She trailed off. What? What would he have done? I don't know, she admitted. But I was too afraid to find out. And that's my greatest shame. I failed you because I was afraid. We sat in heavy silence, the ticking of the mantel clock marking the seconds. Outside, I knew Kieran was waiting patiently in his car, giving me the time I needed. Is it true that Kieran sent me letters, birthday cards, tried to visit? My mother nodded miserably. Stephen intercepted everything. Threatened legal action if Kieran came near the house. I saved some of them. The letters, the cards. I have them hidden in my closet. I want them, I said firmly. All of them. She nodded again, rising to go upstairs. While she was gone, I looked around the living room that had never felt like mine. Photos of Ethan and Madison dominated the walls. Only a single school portrait of me remained, tucked on a side table as an afterthought. Mom returned carrying a shoebox, worn with age. I couldn't save everything. Stephen found my hiding place once and destroyed most of it. But these... She handed me the box with trembling hands. I managed to keep these. I opened it to find a collection of envelopes, cards, and small packages, a fraction of what Kieran must have sent over the years, but tangible proof of his efforts. I closed the lid, unable to read them in front of her. What will you do now? She asked quietly. I'm staying with Kieran. Finishing school, then college. I stood, box tucked under my arm. I don't hate you, Mom, but I don't know how to forgive you either. Not yet. Her face crumpled, but she nodded in understanding. Will you at least let me know you're okay? Call sometimes? The plea in her voice, the mother I remembered from before Stephen, before everything went wrong, tugged at my heart despite my resolve to stay strong. I'll call, I promised. But I need time. As I turned to leave, she caught my hand. Olivia, wait. There's something else you should know. She hesitated, conflict clear on her face. About your college fund. The money your grandparents left you. I frowned. What money? What grandparents? My parents. They set aside money for your education before they died. It was in a trust, supposed to mature when you turned 18. Her voice faltered. Stephen convinced me to let him invest it, manage it for better returns. I don't know what's happened to it, but it should be yours. Another betrayal. Another piece of my history kept from me. How much? Originally? About $80,000? She couldn't meet my eyes. Stephen has the paperwork. I've asked about it over the years, but he always says it's taken care of. I absorbed this new information, adding it to the growing list of things Stephen had stolen from me. I'll have Adrian look into it, I said finally. He's Dad's lawyer, a good one. She flinched slightly at my use of Dad for Kieran, but nodded. I'll help however I can. I owe you that much, at least. At the door, I paused for one last question. Are you going to be okay? With Stephen? Her smile was sad, resigned. I made my choices, Olivia. I have to live with them. But knowing you're safe, that you found Kieran, that helps. I walked back to Kieran's waiting car, the shoebox of salvaged connections clutched to my chest. As I slid into the passenger seat, he looked at me questioningly but didn't press for details. She kept some of your letters, I said, tapping the box. Not many, but some. His eyes widened, a complex emotion crossing his face. I never knew if any of them reached you. They didn't, I replied. Not until now. But she hid them, saved them. It's something, I guess. He nodded, understanding in his expression. It's something. As we drove away from my old life, I felt neither triumph nor closure, just a quiet, painful clarity about the choices that had shaped my existence and the new choices that lay ahead. 3 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and revelation. With Adrian's help, we transferred my academic records to a high school closer to Kieran's home for my final month before graduation. The change was disorienting but necessary. I couldn't face returning to my old school, couldn't bear the whispers and questions about my sudden departure from the Hale household. The contents of the shoebox my mother had given me became a bridge to the past I'd never known. Each letter and card revealed another facet of the father I was slowly coming to know. His handwriting, similar to mine in its slight leftward slant, filled pages with stories of his life, questions about mine, and unwavering expressions of love despite the distance between us. Reading them was like assembling a puzzle with missing pieces, but the picture that emerged was clear. Kieran Brooks had never stopped being my father, even when circumstances prevented him from being in my life. On a rain-soaked Saturday 3 days before my new school's graduation ceremony, Adrian arrived at the house with a thick folder of legal documents. Kieran made coffee while I sat at the kitchen table, anxiety churning in my stomach. "Good news," Adrian said, spreading papers before me. "We found your trust fund." My breath caught. "The money from my grandparents?" Adrian nodded, his expression grim but satisfied. "Stephen diverted it into a series of investments under his control. Technically illegal, since the trust specified you as the sole beneficiary upon turning 18. We've filed the necessary paperwork to recover it." "How much is left?" Kieran asked, placing mugs before us. "That's the surprising part," Adrian replied. "Stephen may be ethically bankrupt, but he's a decent investor. The original 80,000 has grown to nearly 110,000. The number hung in the air, almost incomprehensible to me. Enough for college, enough for a start in life, that I'd never imagined possible. "He'll fight it," I said, thinking of Stephen's cold fury when challenged. Adrian's smile was sharp. "Let him. The documentation is ironclad and he knows it. That's why we received this morning." He slid another document across the table. "A settlement offer. He'll transfer the full amount to an account in your name, provided we sign an agreement not to pursue any further legal action." Kieran frowned. "What's his angle? Why give in so easily?" "Because he knows we could pursue more," Adrian explained. "Child support he should have paid, emotional distress, potentially even fraud charges for how he handled the trust. He's cutting his losses." I stared at the settlement papers, emotions churning. After years of feeling powerless against Stephen's control, here was tangible evidence that he could be beaten, that his money and influence weren't invulnerable. "There's something else," Adrian continued, more gently now. "Your mother called me yesterday. She's left Stephen, took Ethan and Madison to her sister's place in Cincinnati. The news hit me like a physical force." "She left him? After all these years?" Adrian nodded. "Apparently your confrontation sparked something. And when she questioned Stephen about the trust fund, things got ugly. She didn't share details, but she made the decision to leave that night." A complicated tangle of emotions knotted in my chest. Relief, vindication, and a surprising surge of worry for my half-siblings, caught in a storm they didn't create. "Is she okay?" I asked, surprised by my own concern. After weeks of nursing my hurt, "She sounded determined," Adrian replied carefully. "She asked if you'd call her when you felt ready. No pressure." I nodded, not yet certain how I felt or what I wanted to say to her. The wound of her silence that night was still raw, but beneath it lay 18 years of more complex history. Moments of love and protection mingled with the failures and compromises. "What do you want to do about the settlement?" Kieran asked, bringing us back to the matter at hand. I looked at the papers before me. The legal language that would translate to freedom. Freedom to attend NYU without financial strain. Freedom from any lingering power Stephen might hold over my future. I want to accept it, I decided. Not because I'm forgiving him, but because I want to be done with him. I want to move forward. Adrian nodded approvingly. "I think that's wise. We can have this processed quickly. The funds should be available before you start college in the fall." After Adrian left, Kieran and I sat in companionable silence in the living room, each absorbed in our own thoughts. Rain pattered against the windows, creating a cocoon of quiet around us. "I keep thinking about Mom," I admitted finally. "About Ethan and Madison." Kieran set aside the book he'd been pretending to read. "Are you worried about them?" "Yes. No, I don't know." I struggled to articulate the complex tangle of feelings. "They're my siblings, even if we've never been close. And Mom, she made terrible choices, but seeing her stand up to Stephen finally, it changes things somehow." "Families are complicated," Kieran said simply. Relationships evolve, sometimes in unexpected ways. There's no roadmap for this situation. I twisted a strand of hair around my finger, a nervous habit I'd recently realized I shared with him. Would you be upset if I called her? If I wanted to see Ethan and Madison sometimes? His expression softened. Olivia, I would never want to keep you from any relationship that's important to you. Your mother was wrong to let Stephen push me out of your life. I won't make the same mistake by trying to dictate who should be in yours. The generosity of this response, from a man who had every reason to be bitter toward my mother, brought tears to my eyes. How are you not angry all the time? At her, at Stephen, at everything you missed? Oh, I was angry, he admitted. Furious, devastated, broken, for years. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. But anger is a fire that consumes the person holding it. At some point, I had to decide whether to let it burn me up completely or channel it into something else. Into waiting, planning, preparing for the day I might have a chance to be your father again. I thought about the room filled with evidence of that patient vigil, the photos, the journals, the gifts, a different kind of fire, burning steadily through years of separation. I'm calling her, I decided, reaching for my phone. Not promising anything, but at least to make sure they're okay. Kieran nodded, rising to give me privacy. His hand rested briefly on my shoulder, a touch so simple yet so laden with support and understanding that it nearly undid me. The call was brief, stilted with the awkwardness of too many unspoken words, but real. Mom sounded different, her voice stronger than I remembered, without the constant undercurrent of anxiety that had colored our interactions for years. Ethan and Madison were adapting, confused but resilient in the way of young children. She wasn't coming back to Stephen. She'd found a job at a local gallery in Cincinnati, was renting a small apartment, starting over at 42. I'm proud of you, I told her, surprising us both with the words. Her quiet, thank you, carried the weight of years of missing those words, that sentiment. When I hung up, I found Kieran in his study, grading papers with reading glasses perched on his nose. Another trait I'd inherited, the slight nearsightedness that made small print blur. She's really left him, I said from the doorway. Started over completely. He looked up, removing his glasses. That takes courage. Yes, I agreed. It does. Standing there, watching my father work in the warm light of his desk lamp, I felt something settle within me. Not completion or perfect healing, but a foundation solid enough to build upon. A new beginning, constructed from the broken pieces of what came before. Graduation day dawned bright and clear, the June sky a perfect Ohio blue. I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, no longer the guest room but truly mine now. Decorated with books and photographs and small treasures Kieran had helped me select, and adjusted the cap on my head. The tassel swung gently as I moved, small symbol of accomplishment and transition. Olivia, Kieran called from downstairs. We should leave soon if we want good seats. Coming, I replied, taking one last look at my reflection. The girl who stared back was both familiar and strange. The same features, but something different in the eyes. Something steadier, perhaps. More certain. Downstairs, Kieran waited by the door in a suit I'd never seen before, clearly new and carefully chosen for the occasion. The sight of him, so formally dressed, so obviously nervous about getting this milestone right, filled my chest with a warmth I was still getting used to. You look very professorial, I teased, easing the moment. He grinned, adjusting his tie self-consciously. Too much? I can change. No, it's perfect. I hesitated, then added, Thanks for making such a big deal of this. I know I've only been at the new school for a few weeks. It would have been easier to skip the ceremony entirely. Kieran's expression turned serious. Not a chance. You've earned every moment of celebration today, regardless of which school's name is on the diploma. The graduation ceremony itself passed in a blur of speeches and name-calling, the rustle of robes and the constant flashing of cameras. I'd made few connections at the new school, but it hardly mattered. The important thing was the ending, the official closing of one chapter of my life and the beginning of another. As I crossed the stage to receive my diploma, I heard Kieran's voice above the polite applause. Not a whoop or a shout, but my name, spoken with such pride and love that it carried to me like a physical thing. I turned toward the sound and saw him standing, Adrian beside him applauding enthusiastically, and there, 3 rows back, a surprise I hadn't expected, my mother, with Ethan and Madison fidgeting in their Sunday clothes. Our eyes met across the auditorium, and she offered a tentative smile, a small wave. I managed a nod in return before continuing. Across the stage, emotions tangling in my throat. After the ceremony, we gathered awkwardly in the school parking lot, Kieran and my mother keeping a careful distance, the children staring curiously at the half-sister they barely knew, and the man who was my father but a stranger to them. "Congratulations," Mom said, handing me a small wrapped package. "I'm so proud of you." The words were simple, but weighted with everything that had passed between us. I accepted the gift with murmured thanks, unsure how to navigate this new terrain of cautious reconciliation. Ethan, ever direct at 9 years old, broke the tension. "Are you coming to live with us in Cincinnati?" he asked, frowning up at me. "No," I said gently. "I live with my dad now. And in the fall, I'll be going to college in New York." "NYU," Kieran added, a note of unmistakable pride in his voice. "Full scholarship plus the trust fund. She'll be studying literature and psychology." My mother's eyes widened slightly. "The trust fund? You got it back?" "Adrian did," I confirmed. Stephen settled rather than fight it. A complex emotion crossed her face. Relief mingled with something like vindication. "Good," she said. Simply, "That's good." The conversation limped along for a few more minutes, the weight of the past both acknowledged and carefully stepped around. Finally, Mom checked her watch and mentioned the long drive back to Cincinnati, the need to get the children home for dinner. As they prepared to leave, Madison, only 6 and far less aware of the complicated dynamics at play, tugged at my graduation gown. "Will you come visit us sometime? Mommy says you're our big sister." The simple question, asked with a child's directness, momentarily stole my voice. I knelt to her level, meeting eyes so like my mother's. "I'd like that," I said softly. "Maybe this summer, before I go to college." Her face lit up, and she threw small arms around my neck in a quick, impulsive hug that caught me off guard. Over her shoulder, I met my mother's gaze, her eyes bright with unshed tears, a thank you in her expression that didn't need words. After they left, Kieran and I headed to his car in comfortable silence. He'd planned a celebration dinner at a nice restaurant downtown, followed by a surprise he wouldn't reveal despite my persistent questioning. "They seem to be doing better," he observed carefully. As we drove, "Your mother and the children." I nodded, looking out at the passing streets. "She's different now, stronger somehow. Sometimes it takes losing everything to find what you're capable of," he said quietly. We arrived at the restaurant, an elegant place with white tablecloths and candles, far fancier than anywhere I'd been before. A small reserved sign sat on a corner table, and the host greeted Kieran by name. He'd clearly gone to considerable effort to make this evening special. After we ordered, Kieran reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box, sliding it across the table. "Graduation present," he explained. "I hope it's okay." Inside, nestled on velvet, was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant. A book, its cover etched with tiny stars. I lifted it, carefully turning it over to find an inscription on the back. "Your story is just beginning. Love, Dad." "It's beautiful," I whispered, emotion tightening my throat. "There's something else," he said, reaching again into his jacket. This time he withdrew an envelope. "This is the deed to the house," he explained. "I've had it put in both our names." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "What? Why?" His expression was earnest, slightly nervous. "Because I want you to always have a home, Olivia. No matter where you go, what you do, who you become, I never want you to doubt that you have a place where you belong. No one can ever put your things in a trash bag and tell you to leave, not ever again." The gift, not just the legal document, but the security, the belonging it represented, was so overwhelming that I couldn't speak for a moment. All the years of feeling temporary, contingent, unwanted in Stephen's house collapsed into this single gesture of permanence and love. "Thank you," I managed finally, the words entirely inadequate for what I felt. Kieran smiled, understanding in his eyes. "You don't need to thank me. This is what parents are supposed to do. Create safety, build foundations. I'm just making up for lost time." Later that night back home, I sat on the porch swing Kieran had installed the previous weekend. The summer air was warm, filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and the distant rumble of thunder, promising a storm later. Kieran joined me, 2 mugs of tea in hand. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, passing me a steaming mug. I accepted it, gratefully watching the play of fireflies in the darkening yard. "I was just thinking about what you said at dinner. about parents building foundations. I paused, gathering my thoughts. For so long, I felt like I was building my own foundation, alone, brick by brick, never quite sure if it would hold. Now it's like suddenly there's this structure around me. Support. It's still strange. Good. Strange or bad strange? He asked. Good strange, I assured him. Just taking some getting used to. We swung in companionable silence for a while, watching night settle over the neighborhood. From inside came the soft chime of the grandfather clock Kieran had inherited from his father, marking time in the steady way it had for generations. I've been thinking about the future, I said. Eventually. About going to NYU being so far away when we've just found each other? Kieran nodded, understanding the unspoken worry. Distance doesn't change what matters, Olivia. I spent 12 years loving you from a distance. A few 100 miles won't even register. The simple certainty in his voice settled something within me. I know. And there's breaks. Holidays. I turned to look at him. Fully. I was thinking Thanksgiving might be complicated, though. He raised an eyebrow, questioning. Mom asked if I might come to Cincinnati for part of it, I explained. She's trying to establish new traditions with Ethan and Madison away from Stephen's influence. And I thought, maybe you could come too. Not the whole time, but just, I don't know. It's probably a terrible idea. Kieran was quiet for a long moment, considering. Not terrible, he said finally. Complicated, certainly. But family usually is. He took a sip of his tea. Let me think about it. But regardless of what I decide, you should go if you want to. Building a relationship with your siblings is important. The understanding in his response, the complete lack of possessiveness or bitterness that would have been so understandable, confirmed what I'd been learning about my father over these weeks together. His love came without conditions, without the constant calculations of worth and obligation that had defined my relationship with Stephen. I've been reading your journals, I admitted quietly. The ones you wrote to me all those years. A few pages each night before bed. He looked surprised, then slightly embarrassed. They're probably rather sentimental. I was writing to a child I couldn't see, trying to preserve some connection. They're beautiful, I corrected. Like getting back pieces of my childhood I never knew existed. Like having a father all along, even when I thought I didn't. Thunder rumbled closer now, and a few heavy drops of rain began to fall. Neither of us moved to go. Inside. Protected by the porch roof as the storm approached. Family isn't the house you're trapped in or the silence you're forced to accept, I said, voicing the thought that had been forming in me over these transformative weeks. Family is who fights for you when the world tries to take you away. I wasn't abandoned. I was loved all along. And now, I'm finally home. Kieran's hand found mine in the gathering darkness, a touch that bridged 18 years of separation and spoke of all the years to come. Together, we watched the storm roll in, not with fear, but with the quiet certainty of shelter found, of belonging secured, of truth finally triumphant over lies.